Hello everyone and welcome to another installment of Slammin Synapses right here on Facebook and YouTube. This segment will be submitted for possible inclusion to the PW Insider family of websites. That's pwinsider.com, pwinsiderelite.com, and pwinsiderextra.com. Elite site's a great paid site to go to, like I always said. So much great audio, so much great video there. You won't be disappointed. If you're viewing me through YouTube, you see a subscribe button up here. Click on that. Keep up to date with the ongoing series of Slammin Synapses. If you want to drop me a comment, you'll see a box down below as well. So now that we got the business taken care of out of the way, I'm going to jump into this week's segment titled Toxicity. Lindsay Lohan was arrested for DUI, and if you've seen the news as of late, you found out she was brought to court because she failed to keep up with her mandated community service. What does this have to do with this topic? Well, I'm going to jump around in a couple of things here, but it's all about enabling for the most part. There was a thing on ESPN recently called E60 where part of their show was devoted to Scott Hall. Now, Scott Hall, as you're aware of, has had some alcohol, some drug-related issues that have upon his life. And there was something that was mentioned, and it was like his family was alcoholics, his grandparents were alcoholics, so he was predestined for that. My dad was an alcoholic. Then he saw he had kids, and he figured, it was time to get his act cleaned up, and he stayed sober. He stayed sober for a very, very, very long time. Never went back to drinking again. So, a majority of it comes down to it's like, if you were one, I mean myself, I've been known to drink from time to time, but if you give me a choice between a beer and a pop, I will then alert. No sponsorship here. Well, choose a pop over anything. So just because my dad was an alcoholic doesn't mean that I was destined to be one. The problem is that if you put yourself in environments where you are enabled, things are going to happen. And I think Scott Hall was just put in that thing where no matter what his friends will say with regards to helping him, if you put him in situations that enable that, it's going to continue to go on. So what is this? Basically, if that segment didn't take place, I'd still be talking about this, but this is going to add to that. Talk about TNA for just a bit here on that topic. Pretty much, if you've heard about the Bound for Glory pay-per-view with regards to Hulk Hogan's thing about Robert Roode's not ready, and then it's like they did that to swerve the internet marks. Well, when you think about the fact that, like you guys, you're viewing me on YouTube, so you're viewing me on the net. If you check up on your news, you check up through internet websites like pwinsider.com, for instance. Not going to mention other sites because I'm not going to promote them for purposes of preserving stability here, but there are some wrestling sites out there that people go to get their news or see what gets copied and pasted from such quality sites as PW Insider on there. But the truth of the matter is, if you're going to insult part of your audience for being internet marks, considering the fact that you guys have a website and an app on phones, it's like you're insulting your core audience with doing that. And it's amazing that they decided to sign Hogan for another 2 years. Because Hogan's all about enabling. I mean, the whole company, TNA, is about enabling for the most part. Now, granted, you have a lot of great people there that don't cause any trouble, don't cause any chaos, but those kind of get thrown aside or cast on the cast away. You look at Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle on trial for a lot of DUI situations. You have Jeff Hardy, man that was put on trial, convicted, served his time in jail. You have Matt Hardy, a person who had drug problems, but was only fired because Dixie Carter's mother or parents just happened to see it and figured, hey, they had to say something to her. But for the most part, the whole company is about enabling. I mean, like WWE, for instance, I mentioned this before many times. Rob Van Dam and Sabu gets pulled over for marijuana possession. No sooner afterwards does Rob Van Dam lose the WWE Championship, but also lose the ECW Championship that he had won previously, because basically he put a black eye on the company, and by all rights, WWE did not want any embarrassment to be put on the headlines, on the front lines with their championship. TNA, on the other hand, doesn't tend to go that way. If you have any problems, they will push you. They will keep the title on you. It's like they don't think. Hulk Hogan has a son, got into a car accident, caused pretty much irreparable harm to a John Graziano, who by all rights will never, ever, ever be the same again. But Hogan, instead of taking responsibility for it, will then try to find ways of hiding his money, blaming the insurance company for telling him that he should have been insured for more. Just things of that nature. It's like he's not taking responsibility for his kid or his actions. Instead, he chooses to hide it. Hogan, on many interviews, would go on shows and not even mention TNA. Now, if I'm working for a company, I mean, you look at Mick Foley, for instance, any opportunity he gets to, for the most part, he would mention TNA. Why? Because he worked for him. You look at John Cena. If he's on an interview segment, what gets mentioned? WWE. Triple H. WWE. What else? And you see people do interview segments and they mention the place where they're at. Andre the Giant, WWF. It's like when Hogan was wrestling for WWE, it was WWE. But now it's like, I don't have to mention TNA. Why? Because I don't have to. I don't want to. Is he that ashamed of where he works that he doesn't mention it? Instead, he puts on this micro championship wrestling that it's like there's no tie-in to that. Granted, it's like you may give him the rights to do his outside projects, but if he's working for you, you would think that he would mention you. I mean, where I work at, I have no problem mentioning where I work at. I may discuss other things, but it's like I have no problem mentioning where I work at. So it's just amazing that they're going to sign Hulk Hogan to a 2-year deal when he really does nothing for the company. Really does nothing. I mean, basically he brings that nostalgia. I mean, you have Spike, who's basically the battered wife in all this because of the way that WWE left them, and they're like, oh, well, this is pure speculation on my part, is that I think that Spike wants to hold on to TNA so much because they were wronged by WWE when they left. That's like, we don't care what kind of ratings you get, just as long as you're on our network. UFC's about to leave them, so it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. But yeah, to take this a little bit further, this is an open letter to Dixie Carter. It's like, if they're doing it under your watch, you're just as bad as them. You enable it. WWE, Vince McMahon, they get ahead of things. They get in front of things. They do damage control. It's like Rob Van Dam took titles off him, took him out of the spotlight. Why? Because he was a black guy. A lot of people they take away because they wear a black eye. They do damage control. I can't mention damage control enough here. But they do what it takes to not put their people in positions where they're going to embarrass the company. But instead, TNA, with Kurt Angle, with his problems, keeps the title on him. Jeff Hardy has his problems. He's about to go to jail, but they decide to push him again as a babyface, put him in a more prominent role. Matt Hardy, fired only because Dixie Carter's parents just happened to be watching TV at the right time. And Hulk Hogan, instigating masses, saying a whole bunch of stupid things, putting things on Twitter, basically embarrassing the company, and yet the company still takes him, still has him on, signs him to a 2-year deal. Dixie Carter, this is your company. Get ahead of this. It's like it seems like you have no control over your own company. Granted, you may give the rights to other people to run it, but this is your company. This is your parents' company. They put money into this. And you're willing to take all that money and throw it away. Why? Because you don't get ahead of things. There's situations that are very well known. These things that I'm telling you is basically out there already. This isn't anything new. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. But the fact that you enable it puts you in just the same position as like Hulk Hogan is, like a Kurt Angle is, like a Jeff Hardy is. Sure, you may not have done their crime, but you're allowing them to do the time in your company and not getting ahead of it. To me, that's why WWE, I mean, granted, their company as of late has not been bright in terms of storylines. Why? Because they feel they have no competition. When WCW was at its hottest, that's when WWE was as well, because they realized they kept getting beat in the ratings and they had to do something. They had to turn that board around and say, "Hey, we need to make this a better show." But since there's no competition, there's really no need for that. There's nothing screaming in their head like, "Man, we have to do something." TNA, I really don't know where you're going to be going this year. I've said on my previous segment, if you want to check out a previous archive segment, check out my thing called Are You Ribbing Me TNA. I've said if they continue on this course, they will not be in business for long. You may have money through your direct audio insurance deal, and why the hell you'd fire the guy that got you that deal in the first place. It's like you may have that money, but if people aren't watching you, you're just gonna have money, and the sponsor may pull that from you. I've seen a couple of cases where sponsors have put money into things. The company wasn't performing the way they were, and they wanted their money back. It's like, why put your money in something that just dies or is destined for failure? Just think about that. So it shouldn't come as a surprise if one day down the line, this direct audio insurance, someone from the company says, "Hey, we want our money back. We put our money into you under the impression that this was going to happen," but it didn't. Company of enablers. Like I said, Dixie Carter, you're just the same as they are. Guilt by association. Guilt by ignorance. Guilt by blinders. TNA, I want you to succeed. I want to have something to watch where I could feel proud to watch it. Like I said, right, I've said many times, I really don't watch the product that much. Why? Because there's nothing shown to give me. Storylines jump around a lot. There's no real payoffs in a lot of things. A lot of confusion. A lot of misguidance. It's hard for me to become invested in it. It's hard for me to get into it. Why? Because of the way it's presented. And if I feel this way, you can imagine others feel as well. This isn't just me just in front of a camera. It's like I've said many times, my opinion is mine alone. But I can't be the only one with this opinion. I can't be the only one with this thought process. Right now it's October 20th, 2011. By the end of 2012, will TNA even still be around? Like I said many times before, I've seen many companies come and go. I've seen some come in for a week and go out just as fast. On the road that you're going, TNA, will you still be around at the end of 2012? Or will you just be another footnote on those wrestling companies that tried to be somebody? Think about it. If you want to succeed, it's like basically you had the solution in your hands. You had Paul Heyman, and I'm not the guy that drinks the Kool-Aid here, but you had a person that had a vision for your company, that had ideals to make it grow. And I don't know if you felt threatened by that. I don't know if it just caught you off guard that this was a guy that was going to come in and turn your company upside down, probably get rid of a lot of dead weight that had to be gotten rid of. But you had it there. You had a person that would have probably taken your company to places that was never before seen, but instead you threw it all away because you wanted to go with Bischoff and Hogan and Russo. And you may put Pritchard in the head writing position, but as long as Russo is still a functioning portion of that, it doesn't make any difference. It really doesn't make any difference. At my church, we have a pastor. We had a senior pastor. There came a time when he was retiring. And his son took over. And the biggest concern was if he was around, not the son, but the father was still around, that it really wouldn't make a difference. His father had the sense enough, though granted he still kind of helps out on mission stuff, but he took himself away from the process. He's not involved in many. It's like he's there if he's there for advice, but for the most part he's not dealing with the goings on anymore, because he had sense enough to realize that. He had sense enough to realize that if he had any main role in the company, in the church, it's like his son taking over as senior pastor really wouldn't be taking over, because there's still that influence there. So yeah, you could have Russo as still in the role, still in the main thought, but he's still there, and as a result, things won't change. And if they do change, it's still going to have those fingerprints on it. Like I said before, I want you to succeed. I want to have something that I can watch. I want to turn on WWE and have something I can watch. Hopefully, if Ring of Honor gets their iPhone situation taken care of, I'll be watching them too. But I want to have something to watch. And right now, WWE is not really giving me that much. But I will watch them because they kind of have some sort of sense in how they run their company. Kind of, sort of. It's just amazing. You enable people, and it only allows destruction. It only allows it to be drawn. It allows it to be damaged. I don't know what you're thinking with your decisions, but things need to be changed. Otherwise, you can just be a footnote, an asterisk, a place in the history book where, even though you are there, you should still be around. I'd like to hear what you think. Drop me a comment if you want. Drop me an email. Throw something on my Facebook page. Let me know where you're coming from. If you are watching this, let me know your thought processes, because I'd be more than happy to hear them. You see a graphic on here that's going to show you how to do that, but drop me a line. Tell me what you think. So, that's going to wrap up this segment of Slammin' Synapses. Think about TNA. The T in TNA, granted, you may call yourself Impact Wrestling, but the T in TNA should not stand for Toxicity. And right now, that's what it stands for. Toxicity. You've come a long way since your weekly pay-per-views. And it seems like every week just seems to go a little bit further down, based on decisions I can make. That's it for now. I have nothing else. I could sit here for the next 20 minutes or so, rambling on about stuff, but I don't think you'd want to hear it. I don't think I'd want to hear it either. So, we're just going to wrap this segment up. We'll come back at you next week. We may do a non-wrestling segment sometime in the next couple of days, depending on schedules, but if not, come back next week. More Slammin' Synapses. This is Albert Guerrier. See you next week. Good night, everybody.